Greetings, YouTube. Welcome back to the channel. Here's the deal. We have a genius in the midst, not me. Lord knows that ain't true. We have somebody from the community who is all about taking champions who have been nerfed, like OG Thor in this case, or who just haven't had their due in the game, and reworking them based off of his genius to be not just champions you're excited about, but champions that have unique, fun, and dare I say at times, game-changing abilities. If you forgot or don't know, patch 12.0, years and years ago now, because we're all so old that have been played this from the beginning, took Thor's hammer. I remember this meme going around. It went from Thor's hammer to after it was like a toy. It was like plastic. It was like a popsicle stick. Now, I'm not saying OG Thor doesn't have some utility and some damage. He does. But you would never rank him up to where the top members of the Cosmic class are now. And so many of the arguments, I talked to KT1 about this when we were doing our conversation interview, which I still really appreciate. KT, thank you. A lot of the arguments that were made as to why they nerfed patch 12.0 champions are completely irrelevant and hypocritical now, because so many champions that they've released, including ones in Thor's own class, are so good now that they just completely, it's wrong. I want to say the word hypocritical again, but it's just wrong. So we've got Thor's brief description. I am not going to spend time on this reading this because I feel like the point is to talk about the buff, not the background. But if you would like to read it, you can pause the video and read it there. All right. Armor Break, Fury, Thunder Field. I live in Oklahoma, home of the Oklahoma City Thunder. So a Thunder Field sounds like the Thunder are getting a new baseball team. How about that? From basketball to baseball. Thor's mechanic. Thor is all about inflicting critical hits with heavy attacks to gain some indefinite furies. Once that is done, he has to charge his heavy attack to gain a Thunder Field. So there's a lot more work involved in ramping him up than it was pre-patch 12.0 Thor. Although that still took some work. If you go back and look at the videos of him before, even though he was doing crazy damage, it still was about timing and basically being aggressive. Granting him a major portion of utility, not only in basic attacks, but also in special attacks. His awakened ability also weakens his opponents a tad bit, giving him the edge. I mean, he should be amazing in this game, right? There's no reason why OG Thor shouldn't be one of the best champions in the game. Certainly one of the best champions in his own class. Strengths. Immune to Nullify, Stagger, and Fate Seal. This is awesome. Thor gains most of his damage from Fury buffs. Fortunately for him, his immunity to Nullify, Stagger, and Fate Seal ensures that his high damage stays that way, ignoring those pesky, tricky Mystic champions. Which is saying something, because last time I checked, Mystic champions like to fight Cosmic champions. Indestructibility Manipulation. When Thor generates his Thunder Field, he gains a special kind of indestructible, and a method to bypass the death-preventing abilities of his opponents. That's just, quite frankly, that's badass. Thus ensuring he delivers his final blow with true might. Thor is, after all, one of the most powerful Asgardians. One of the most? Why not make an argument for the most? Now, he does have some weaknesses. Shock immunity. In addition to Fury buffs, the other major source of Thor's damage is shock damage and debuffs. Any opponent with shock immunity, shout out to Korg thing, etc., can give a perfect comeback to the Asgardian god of thunder. Yeah, you wouldn't want to fight Nebula with Thor, but that should be obvious. Reducing his critical rating. Thor's damage increases from his Fury buffs. An opponent who can reduce his critical rating will reduce his chances of gaining Furies and reduce his damage substantially. Abilities. Following stats and abilities are based on a rank 5, level 65, 5-star champion. Passive. Thor's Asgardian heritage makes him immune to Nullify, Stagger, and Fate Seal. Thor is immune to Poison and Shock. That is also amazing. Critical hits on basic attacks have a 30% chance to grant Thor a Fury buff, raising his attack rating by plus 30% for 10 seconds. Max of 5. If critical hits were inflicted using a heavy attack, these Furies become indefinite. Now that is a great way to control damage of this champion. Thor's might prevents the opponent from reducing the duration of his debuffs while he has at least one Fury buff. Well-timed blocks, aka parries, against the opponent have a 50% chance to armor break the opponent, reducing their armor rating by 8%, max 5. These armor break debuffs last 9 seconds. That is also fantastic utility. Developer note: Thor gains access to a ton of immunities and fury buffs. These fury buffs also prevent the opponent from reducing the duration of his debuffs, countering annoying nodes and champions such as Rapid Metabolism, Limber, Rogue, Groot, etc. Thunder Field. Charging a heavy attack for 2 seconds grants Thor a Thunder Field for 18 seconds, plus an additional 3 seconds for each fury buff currently active on him. This field grants the following abilities. Activating this field grants Thor a True Armor passive, granting him immunities to Armor Break and Armor Shatter. This True Armor passive also prevents him from taking damage from any source. This True Armor lasts indefinitely until the Thunder Field ends. Ooh, that could be a good defensive measure. If the opponent has a True Strike buff or passive, this True Armor is converted into a True Safeguard, preventing him from taking more than 1% of his max health from a single source. When struck with a heavy attack, the True Armor shatters and gets removed. When this happens, the field does not get removed. Can I just point out that this man, who created this out of his own brain, is so amazing and so specific that not only does this read like something that the best Kabam developers would write, but it's just really impressive in terms of specificity. And I have to say, Kabam should hire this man. I've been saying this all along. They should hire him. They know what's good for him. We're still mourning Kabam Broccoli. He cannot be replaced. While this field is active, contact with Thor inflicts 1,400 shock damage on the opponent. This damage scales with base attack only. If the opponent has made contact with Thor at least thrice while his Thunder Field is active, they are inflicted with a Destructibility passive, preventing them from triggering any abilities that would prevent their death. This Destructibility passive lasts indefinitely until the Thunder Field ends. While this Destructibility passive is active, Thor can bypass miss and auto-block abilities. That is also amazing. While this field is active, Thor cannot use his heavy attack. That's interesting. When this field ends, it goes on cooldown for 10 seconds. That's standard stuff. Developer note: the Thunder Field is a major source of Thor's utility. It grants him True Armor, the different method of indestructibility, a method of failing the opponent's death prevention abilities, and some on-demand shock damage. Make sure to build up to 5 Fury buffs and then generate this field, not only to extend its duration, but also because its heavy attack cannot be used while this field is active. I think that's a fair way of making sure he's not too OP, because we know that's one of Kabam's, big concerns. Heavy attacks. While charging this attack, gain 1 unstoppable buff lasting indefinitely until Thor is done charging this attack. Heavy charging can be held for an extended duration. If Thor has charged his heavy attack for less than 2 seconds, the unstoppable buff cannot be removed by any means. If Thor charged his heavy attack for at least 2 seconds, striking him while he is unstoppable removes the unstoppable, and Thor immediately executes this attack. Developer note: this attack provides Thor an easy window to charge his heavy attack, necessary for him to generate the Thunder Field. Special attacks. Okay, we're going to go through these quickly because we're already getting to where the time usually tells me, we should probably wrap this up. All right, Thunder Field is active. The special attacks are unblockable and gain special effects. Special 1, the Power of Lightning. Shock debuff the opponent, 2,350 damage. Special 1 is a simple and quick way of dealing damage with Thor. Energizes him to continue the simple way of damage. Special 2, Strike of the Mighty Mjolnir. I feel like I always mispronounce that word. Remove all debuffs from the opponent. For each debuff removed this way, raise attack rating by 25%. Gain a conductivity buff lasting 30 seconds. While this buff is active, pause the duration of the shock debuffs inflicted on the opponent. This attack raises Thor's attack rating a tad bit for each debuff on the opponent. Special 3 for the Pride of Asgard. This attack grants or inflicts different effects depending on the number of buffs on Thor and his opponent. Less than 3 inflict the opponent with an energy vulnerability passive, reducing the opponent's energy resistance by 20%. 3 to 5 stun debuff. 6 to 7 gain extreme protection buff. More than 7 aptitude buff. This special attack is the primary way of Thor's utility other than from the Thunder Field and his awakened ability. Choose the effect you need depending on your preferences. And then signature ability: defeating an opponent grants Thor an experience charge lasting throughout the quest, max of 3. All right, so then you have different classes here. I'm going to put this on screen to where you can pause it, but I'm not going to read all of it because, again, we're already getting to a little bit longer of time than I'm used to and more comfortable with on videos for my channel. Synergy bonuses: Hulk, Hercules. Regenerate, 20% of missing health. Thor gets some regeneration in this. Gosh, wouldn't that be amazing? Romance, Satan's sister, Thor, Jane Foster. Unstoppable buff when getting a Fury buff. That would suck. An Asgardian family. Immune to shock, Habitude buff. Increase Odin's potency of burst damage. Loki. His special 2 burst damage now bypasses all damage caps and can deal more than 100,000 damage. Now that is wishful thinking at its best. But again, talk about a way to make him good. Increased duration of temporary buffs by 100% for Angela. 50% slower rate at which spirits of the dead expire for Hela. Use parry, stand your ground as the masteries. Look, I've just got to be honest. This might be his best work yet. There's so much detail, so much thought from rsagrawal. Sir, thank you so much. I love featuring your ideas. You are a true gem of the community. Please let me know what your thoughts are on this buff in the comments below.